Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to paint a simple mushroom in mosaic style. I wanted to do this video because I had couple of requests to cover more on the mosaic style of watercolor painting. So we will paint the simple mushrooms, and also I'll walk through uh, 5 of the tips which you should follow if you uh, try to paint a watercolor mosaic. So quickly I'll just walk through what are the materials I have used. So because it's a quite small piece, this is around 5 by 7 inches. So I'm going to use a number 2 round brush. So this is number 2 from Camlin, and this is a local Indian brand. I'm going to use this brush. You can also use any of the square or flat brushes you have. And I'm going to use my Mijello Mission paints, the Mijello Mission gold paints. We are going to use 3 to 4 shades today. So this palette I got with my Mijello Mission paints. So I'm going to use this palette. It also has a mixing area which I use for mixing the colors. I also use sometimes this ceramic tray to mix colors. So coming to the tips, right? The first tip I would like to give, and what I have faced issues with when I started painting, is that it is always a good idea to mix all the paint you need in one go, because often the shades are different or the consistency of the paint is different. So we end up painting the same subject with different shades. So that is tip number 1. Always mix your paints in advance in sufficient quantity, and I think you are good to go from there. So this is a very simple one. I'm going to paint some red and orange mushrooms here, and for the stems of the mushroom we'll use some light burnt sienna, and then I'll try to paint some of the whimsical branches in the background, and that's it. We are not going to do too much with it. Maybe in the bottom of the mushroom where we have some ridges or some sections, there we will take some of the dark yellow or yellow mixed with brown, and then we will try to paint those. So that was tip number 1, that always mix your paints in advance and decide what portion you are going to paint with what. So here I'm starting with the top of the mushrooms. So the tip number 2, right? So when we choose to paint something with mosaic, always try that you are taking some simple subjects and you are not taking too complicated subjects. So always try to take simple objects. If you try to paint a landscape, you may have to make it simpler. If you are trying to paint an animal, you may not be able to paint all the details of that animal, whether it's the eyes or the fur. So try to choose a simple subject. I have posted a link to a couple of my other mosaic works or another tutorials which I have prepared. So what we need to do is we need to simplify our objects before we attempt to paint them in a mosaic style. So I'm going to quickly paint the top of both the mushrooms. I'm going to speed it up, and then we will come to our third tip. So coming to the third tip, right? So though it's a flat style of painting, but we can create some values um, in watercolor as well, I mean in the mosaic as well. So do experiment, that's the third tip. Do experiment with the values. For example, I have created a red mushroom here, but on the second mushroom I'm adding a bit of orange. I'm trying to vary the color of the second mushroom by a bit. So do include some values even if it is a mosaic painting. So it is not necessary that if it's a mosaic we have to paint it in a certain number of colors, or it has to be very flat. You can very well create some values with the help of neutralizing the color, or you can use any adjacent color from the color wheel. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, that do create some more values in your mosaic painting. So here I have completed the top of the second mushroom, which is not that much visible but a bit visible. Now we are going to start with the stem. So I'm not going to call it a tip, but there is one more thing I follow quite frequently, is whenever I'm painting different shapes. So if you see here, you don't necessarily need to paint it in squares. So for example, if you see the stem of the mushroom, this is a long shape. So I choose here to make my pieces of the mosaic a bit longer, and but not in a square shape. It adds more interest to whatever you are painting, and it also adds more fun. It gives some variation. You don't necessarily need to paint all the pieces as of the same size or of the same value, but you can try to paint your pieces with the, imagine that when you make a real mosaic, you will break your glass pieces or your tiles pieces in a longer way. So just like that, I am just trying to paint it in long kind of pieces. So it will be easy for the viewer's eye to decide that what kind of shape it is. And again, like I said in the third tip, that you can always create values here. So for example, I know that the stem of the mushroom is a cylindrical shape. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to give another layer on top of once I have painted it, the initial layer. I'm going to give it one more layer to show that the center part is lighter and the outer part is darker. That's what I will do. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to speed up, and I'm going to complete both the stem, and then we'll go back to the top of the mushrooms, just touch them a little bit to create some value, and then we will come back and then touch or put one more layer on the stem of the mushroom. So I'm going to speed it up from here. Break down your object or subject into smaller pieces and see that it is of what shape. Is it rectangles? Is it circles? Circles don't work very well in mosaic, but something with some sharp edges, that will work fine. So try to break down your object into some geometrical shapes and then paint those shapes as mosaic, so it will become more interesting and it will look more beautiful. So for the second mushroom here, I have created some variation on the brown. So to my reddish brown color, I have added some Nike brown here, and I wanted it to be of a different color. So I have taken some Payne's gray here, and I want to create a layer here just to show that there is a small fold here for the in the mushroom, in the bottom of the mushroom, and then we will start the small veins we have inside the mushroom here. So I'm going to quickly paint. So again, I'm going to follow the same thing which we discussed in the last tip, that whatever is the shape, you can break down your main shape into smaller shapes, and that will ease the process to create the correct shape in your mosaic. I have used a neutral color here because we have already added a lot of bright colors here, so I just wanted to put a very neutral color here. For the next section, I'm going to use yellow ochre. I'm going to use yellow ochre for the bottom area of the mushroom. So coming to my fourth tip, right, the next step. So one of the most important things to keep in mind when you are painting a mosaic is to keep the gaps between the pieces or the smaller shapes consistent. If you see here, I have kept these gaps almost consistent, and at a few places they may be a little bit different, but I have tried to keep them consistent throughout. If we do not do that, it will not give the mosaic a unified look. It will look all around the place, and it may not look like a simpler. You can use big or small shapes, but it is advisable to keep the gaps between the shapes as similar and not changing that. So here I have completed my gray portion. What I have done, I have painted, I have mixed a bit of Payne's gray in that yellow ochre. I wanted a very dull yellow color here, and also I have mixed some water in that, and with that I'm going to paint the bottom part of mushroom. For bottom, I'm not going to paint it in pieces, but we are doing something fun here. I'm going to paint the full pieces as they look in a real mushroom. And this one, I am not painting a realistic mushroom here. This is just a fun mosaic of a mushroom. So I'm not at all trying to create a real mushroom here. We are just trying to paint a mushroom in a different style. So this is really good if you want to give it as a card to somebody with a nice quote. Also, I plan to use it on my print on demand shop, which I have on Redbubble. I'm going to edit these, and then I'm going to put these on some of the print on demand merchandise. Also, I'm going to make a few stickers out of these. I'm going to combine these with some funny quotes, and then I'm going to put these in my Redbubble shop. So that was the fourth tip, that try to keep the gap between your shapes consistent. The white portion which you see, try to keep that consistent. I'm going to speed it up from here, and I'm going to paint the bottom part of both the mushroom. So I'm done with the bottom, and as I told earlier, I'm going to give a little bit of shape to these. So what I'm going to do, I've taken my Payne's gray, and some of the pieces which are at the bottom, I'm going to give a layer of Payne's gray there, because I want to create some value here. So whatever is down, I'm going to give some dark shades there. Also, I'm going to do the same here, so that I can show that the middle portion is getting more light, which means it's a cylindrical form. I'm going to do the same here. So whatever you do with a normal watercolor, you can do everything here almost. You cannot paint mosaics in wet on wet, but you can give the shadows, you can give all the values you want. You may not be able to, I mean, I have not tried, maybe you can paint a monochrome mosaic, but so here I'm just adding some shadows. I'm adding another layer of Payne's gray here. So I think I'm done with the mushrooms. Now we need to paint some of the background foliage. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm just going to put some of the grasses here, some thick grasses here, and then I'm going to just paint few stripes, few big stripes of maybe some neutral greens in the background. That's what I will do, and then we will come to our final tip, what we need to do for painting good mosaics. So I'm going to speed it up, and I'm going to quickly paint the background and some grasses. So I'm switching to a bigger 6 number brush here, because I won't be painting in very small pieces now. So I have switched to a number 6, and I'm trying to paint a kind of ground here. So if you see, I am painting pretty big pieces now because I want to show an impression that the mushrooms are in focus and they are more detailed than the background. So I have painted pretty big pieces here. So I'm just going to drop some brown here. Just to add some interest and to show that this is a ground. So we're done with the ground. What I'm going to do, I think that for background I am going to use a blue color, or maybe a very light blue and gray. I'm going to mix some pale gray in Prussian blue, and I'm going to paint a blue background. So I'm going to speed it up from here, and once we are done with the sky, I'm going to paint pretty big but vertical strokes, vertical pieces. So I'm going to vary the thickness of the blue mix, and don't worry, it will dry up much lighter. It looks very dark now. So that was the last tip. So to show the objects in focus, or where you want to show more details, you use smaller pieces. And if there is something like in this one, there's a background, right? So I have used very big pieces so that there is not too much interest there and it looks very simple. So if you see here, I have used very huge pieces for the background. So same happens when we do actual watercolors, right? When we paint the sky, we paint it with a very big brush, and then we move to the front, or when we move to the foreground, we start using smaller brushes. So that is my fifth tip, that whenever you are trying to portray a scene or a composition in mosaic, you try to use bigger pieces for your backgrounds, also for the parts where you do not want too much focus, and wherever you want more details, you can get that by adding very small pieces or painting the small sections. So I think we are done here. I know some of the parts have not dried up yet. So pretty much we are done here. I'll just remove the tape and then let's see. I have taken a very simple subject here. I have done some of more advanced mosaics. You can see as the link on the screen right now. You can see those. Those are not voiceovers, those are speed paintings because it takes a lot of time. But I like doing mosaics because I don't have to think too much and it's a very simple process, and seeing something taking shape slowly, it's too much fun. So this is how it looks now. So this is very simple. I just wanted to touch upon some of the basic things which we should follow when doing mosaics. If you guys try it out or try any other subjects, please post the link in the comments. Also, if you want to see some simple subjects, you can go to Pixabay or Splash. I have take all of my references from there, so you can go there also. You don't need very expensive papers to paint this. You can paint it on a very basic watercolor paper because we are not doing any heavy wet and wet washes here. So I think that's it for today. Let's meet next time with something new and something more fun. Till then, take care. Thank you. Bye bye.